Earlier this year, the European Union decisively voted to end corporate greenwashing starting in 2026. Yay! But what will it mean and how effective will these policies be? Let's take a closer look. We gained a couch, so I sits. Hey y'all, it's Becky here from the Beckosphere, where we talk about the climate crisis and clean energy transition. If those sound like important topics to you, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss every time I post. For those of you who've been wondering how I've been doing and what I've been up to, again, I'll give you a little life update at the end, so stay tuned. Okay, let's start with what is greenwashing? Greenwashing is when companies advertise that their products or practices are not harmful or even beneficial for the environment when that is not the case. They'll use words and phrases like environmentally friendly, green, natural, carbon neutral, but they don't actually have any required business practices attached to them to claim that. Oftentimes, the companies will end up spending more money on advertising their eco-friendliness than they'll actually spend on improving their practices or products. This is usually enough, though, to confuse consumers into spending more money on a product or service that they perceive as beneficial for the planet, because it's not like we all have time to look everything up. The European Union estimates that 75% of products sold in the bloc make green claims. That's a lot of claims for consumers to suss out. Recognizing this, the EU declared in 2022 that they have had enough of corporate greenwashing nonsense and started the process of creating a ban for using green language in advertising unless companies can actually back up their claims through going through a certification process. That means no more false claims on packaging or in social media campaigns or marketing strategies. Fast forward to 2024, and now the law's language has been finalized and approved by members of the European Parliament and the European Council. Member states now have 24 months past March 2024 to put the law into practice. Let's look a bit more closely now at what companies will have to do in 2026 to legally claim a product is beneficial for the environment in some way. Firstly, they'll need to be more specific by using terms like biodegradable or water saving, something that can be proven, unlike the vague term eco-friendly. They'll submit their claim with the evidence to the EU assigned verifiers, who will provide a response within 30 days. Parliament expects simpler claims will probably hear back sooner than that, though. One aspect that is a big deal is that companies will no longer be able to consider something as carbon neutral if it requires carbon offsets to get there. Carbon offsets are tradable rights or certificates linked to activities that lower the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. For example, a company can no longer claim that a product is carbon neutral by paying to plant trees in Indonesia, because that offset could be 1, unreliable, and 2, unrelated to the tangible emissions created by making that product. The EU decided to crack down on carbon offsets after a damning report by The Guardian, Die Zeit, and SourceWatch into one of the largest carbon offset companies in the world, Vera, reveals that more than 90% of the offsets they gave companies to make green claims were BS. Big yikes. I actually covered this at the time, so check out my climate recap on that topic up in the cards. But wait, there's more. The EU law also tackles misleading product durability claims. No more earlier planned obsolescence. Obsolescence is a fancy word for how quickly a product breaks down. Now, if companies claim an item can be used a certain amount of times, that statement will need to be backed up with evidence. That way, the product won't break down earlier than consumers expect, and also they won't be able to be tricked by statements that claim that a product should be replaced earlier than what's actually necessary. Companies will also no longer be allowed to claim a product is repairable when it's really not. Now, do all companies that provide products for the EU have to follow these rules? No. Micro enterprises, which have 9 employees or less, won't have to follow these rules, and small to medium enterprises, which have 250 employees or less, will have an extra year to follow these rules. So they'll start in 2027. Basically, the law focuses on mega corporations, which I think is rather appropriate because they do have an outsized impact on the environment. So what are the penalties for a company that adds a sustainability term to their product's packaging without submitting it for approval prior? Well, the EU gives an example of the kind of consequence, but honestly, the wording for these punishments makes it sound a little up in the air still, so we'll have to keep an eye on it. Quote, companies that break the rules may face penalties. For example, they could be temporarily excluded from public procurement tenders, lose their revenues, or face fines of at least 4% of the annual turnover. Now, I do appreciate that the EU is providing penalties by the percentage rather than a set amount to make the impact a bit more impactful for larger corporations. But what do you think of these penalties? If you happen to be in the legal department for a corporation that sells products or services in the EU, I recommend checking out the Bloomberg Law article linked below that breaks down how to adjust your thinking to fit this new law. A key thing to remember with this EU move is that it impacts any company that does business in the EU, which means US companies, for example, will have to adjust their practices too. I'm looking at the UK as well. This will likely push the US Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, to add more stringent rules to follow along the same lines. Or at least it should if it was smart, or global corporations will probably be very confused. It's already been reported that the FTC is looking into this issue, but I'm certain that some certain congressmen will push back as soon as it says anything decisive on the issue. Anyways, what do you think of the EU's anti-greenwashing law? Does it go far enough? What other information would you like to know about it? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. Now for a fun fact about Rue before I go into some personal stuff about me. It's time for a fun fact about Rue. Rue turned 5 on the 9th. Little boy celebrated by going out in the backyard, which is one of his favorite things to do. That is until he started eating the grass, in which mom said, "Time's up." And that was a fun fact about Rue. So a lot has happened since my last video, hence why it's been over a month since the last upload. The biggest thing was that my grandma decided to break her hip at 2 in the morning and that I am back to looking for work. So I'm not going to go too in depth about these things, but if you want more updates, I do share a little more detail on my Patreon, which you can join for as little as $3 a month. I'm also pretty blunt on my Twitch stream, TBH, so check that out. The short version is that I've lived with my grandparents for over a year now, and that way I can provide some extra support to them because they are both in their mid-90s. They're doing great for their mid-90s though. I appreciate the genes. But my grandma decided to break her hip decided as if it's a choice, but she broke her hip at 2 in the morning, and so I've been helping with the support as she's been going through the hospital and the rehab facility, and now she's back at home with grandpa, which is awesome. So she's doing way better. We do also have some live-in care, which is why there's a couch here, because this is actually a couch bed. So my recording location will probably move again soon. But yeah, so that's the update on that. And then I am back to looking for work. I'm not going to go into detail as to why, but I'll be looking for the same kind of thing, which is in an environmentally related field and focusing on communications work because that's my experience. But I do also have an interest of going back into getting my master's for like sustainability management, so I can help cities become more sustainable. So I'm kind of in good spirits right now. I'm just seeing where I land is basically the thing. So yeah, so that's where I've been, but I am back to being in the right mindset to making content again, thankfully. Anywho, I hope that everybody is having a great start to their spring season. I know it's been very weird weather recently, and also congrats. February and March are the hottest in human history, so that's cool. Until next time, remember to talk about the climate crisis every single day and to support your local news and environmental organizations. Thank you to the people on Patreon who help support me and my fur baby Rue. A special shout out to the climate confident and courageous David H, Paul B, Phil Plasma, Dan Morton, Specker, Bree C, Deanne, Kevin Morton, SKP Joe's Coursegold, Gary Stark, and OE Tiger. I greatly appreciate your support of $5 or more. If you would like to support the work I do, please check out the Patreon and buy me a coffee, links in the description below for reoccurring or one-time payments. Bye for now.